All right, welcome back to the Weekly Blues podcast. So, unintentionally, our guests primarily have been male throughout. Um, I don't know why we haven't like tapped into females more because that's like one of our best performing episodes. But for you this week, we have a member of the Ripon College women's basketball team. She's a sophomore. She's got a really incredible story. We're really excited to hear it. And so, welcome to the show, Kassidy.
Thanks for having me. Cool to be here.
Yeah. Um, like I said, you have an incredible story and it's really inspiring and I hope people, can take that from this. And as we do with most of our guests, we kind of start with how the pandemic has influenced everyone. And you were talking before we started recording, you have a pretty unique schedule this season at least. Your games get canceled, excuse me, and now you're looking at a couple games, but it's got to be tough, especially in your second year.
Yeah, it is definitely different because I feel like there hasn't been a full season that I've gotten to play. I know I had last
Mhm.
year, but that was kind of a recovery, just trying to come back and see where I stood at. And so not being able to play any games has been hard
Yeah,
since high school.
yeah. Sorry, did I misspeak? Are you a sophomore or junior? Junior, right?
This is my first
Academically.
semester, my
Okay.
senior year. Yeah, academically.
Okay. Jeez, I feel like the years are running together. Like I know you and Larissa were together
Hey,
for
me
a
too.
year. Yeah, it's crazy. So let's start here. Why did you choose Ripon? Like, what was enticing to it? Because, we talked with Larissa and Katie. The program was kind of on a downswing, and then had this big resurgence. Right, there's this big flip from 2 and 20 something or whatever to making the tournament.
hmm
So was that really a drawing? A I don't know, a drawing factor for you, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like the reason why I chose to come to Ripon is actually unique. My personal preference, just because I actually watched Isaac Masters play for the men's team at Ripon,
Okay.
and with Illinois College being in Ripon's conference, I was always going to Jacksonville to watch the IC versus Ripon games. And kind of like you said, they had that slump there where
Mm-hmm.
it was like 2-21 or something like that. While watching Isaac and just going to games, I've watched the women's team slowly progress and get better.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I was a junior, senior in high school, I actually introduced myself to Lauren and just kind of said I liked the way she coached, and I've been watching them, and it was cool to see their team progress into where they were going. And we just kind of kept in touch after that, and she started recruiting me and watching games over the summer. And I came for a visit, and I liked a small campus feels kind of like a home away from home.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to get away and travel a little bit, so 6 hours, did it for me. But it was small, and I was able to play basketball, and I just they had what I wanted to major in, which was like exercise science,
Mm-hmm.
and Coach was great. Seeing the girls was pretty cool, so it was just kind of the right fit, and that's how I ended up there.
Yeah, I forgot that you and Isaac were from the same high school, correct? So it's
Correct.
yeah. No, that's a lot of the theme of hearing why someone chooses to go to a small liberal arts school. I don't even know what the stats are for student athletes. It's like over 50% of students enrolled
Yep.
or something crazy like that. Um, and you can see it with the Wilmore Center and everything going on. But again, I feel like we get too far into like building up Ripon as a school in this show. But um, so you make it to Ripon, and in the beginning of your season, you were definitely seeing the court, correct?
Correct. I think I appeared at least a little bit in every game I was around
Yeah,
them in. I,
yeah, I
just a
think
little bit.
yeah. Um, no, and that I mean, as a program like the women's basketball team, it's so built on building a culture. I feel like just from being somewhat around it, and then being able to see time as a freshman, I think is good in your way, and it gets you exposed into what that because I have to imagine your high school conference or whatever is a lot different than, you know, the MWC
Yeah,
or
for
whatever it
sure.
is. Like the level is the adjustment. I don't know if it's worse, like not worse, but um, more difficult in basketball versus like with the speed of everything as opposed to like a baseball, for example, like what Austin and I played. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely a change in pace, I'd say, coming
yeah,
from it.
Yeah, I remember when I was recruited to play at Ripon, and that big transition from my senior year of high school into my freshman year of college. I was given a lot of responsibility as a freshman coming in. I was kind of given a little bit more leeway as to where my position would be on the team, especially in the starting rotation. Depending on how I did and performed in our practices leading up to the beginning of the season, I remember sitting down in the meeting room right outside of the main gym and like hearing about where I would be in the rotation. And after hearing about that pitching, I think the second day or the second game against, oh man, this is going to be really bad. Rutgers, Rutgers Camden.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where you realize that at the level that we played at, I know Ben, you can attest for this as well. And Cassie, I'm sure you can too, at the Division III level, everybody needs to be able to step up to the plate in order to participate and perform. There's no rhyme or reason sometimes when your name is called, but when it is, you have to make sure that you're ready. And I feel like it's one of the best feelings knowing, especially at being on the team as a freshman or a first year, knowing that you have some sort of role that you can play, whether that is, you know, the second starter or like the second guy out of the bullpen or, you know, the sixth woman on the court, you know, like everybody has that role. And especially building that as a young athlete at that time just only emphasizes the importance of culture. And I think that was seen, even though I didn't spend much time doing and participating as a fan in the other sports that were at Ripon at the time, I could feel that with the sort of the women's basketball team, especially because you guys were catching so much momentum and just building upon every game, every practice. We felt it as baseball players. I know we talked about it, and just like every day at breakdown, just how like watch what they're doing. You know, watch how successful they're doing because they're building that culture. Like that's what we need as a baseball team. So, I mean, we can attest to that struggle of building a culture, but I think it's especially important what you guys did is starting your first year. So, that's just my 2 cents about it.
And it's more of a team sport too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
baseball's that 1v1 at every given moment, essentially. So I think it makes it all the more important of building a culture, like you said. Unfortunately, your season gets cut short. And so did this happen? Like, did you find out over winter break or like when you had your like 4-day break that Lauren gave you?
Yeah. Yeah, so actually I think I noticed symptoms, but obviously didn't correlate it to the mass that was in my chest. I was just like sick and feeling down, I think, during school and during basketball. And it wasn't until I had this like lump on the side of my neck, and we just thought it was a good time to get it looked at since, you know, that 4 days to a week break I got. Just going to see a doctor back at home was probably the best choice. So I went ahead and got like a CT scan, saw an ear, nose, and throat doctor, and they ended up finding that mass then. So yeah, that was right before Christmas, actually.
Yeah, that's got to be tough. And, you know, it's like we said, you're just transitioning into college life, let alone a college sport.
Yeah.
And then you get thrown another curveball. No like pun intended there with baseball, but it's, it's, and I'm sure we'll get into it, how that, you know, affected you. But initially, like what was your headspace like after finding that out?
Like after I was told about the mass, I think, honestly, I think going into it, I saw the lady, she was asking my symptoms, and I was trying to describe, every time I described a symptom, I tried like making an excuse of like, well, it could have been from basketball from me, or I was sick and I had strep, so like I could have been having nights from A or B, or, you know, I was just trying to like think of all the things that could be wrong and what was going on. Kind of like you said, the transition in general. I think obviously nobody knows what to expect their first semester in college because you're coming out of high school, and I've never been away from home for that long. Wasn't really homesick. It was like different weird feelings. So anyways, whenever they let me know it was a mass, they obviously couldn't confirm a diagnosis or anything because had to have a biopsy for that. And I think just knowing they were able to tell me like the size is like 13.5 centimeters or something like that, like a pretty big mass in my chest. And it was like on my, like pressing against my trachea and like on my right lung. I think a lot of people were like shocked or scared and like go to thinking the worst. I will honestly say I think my thought process is that it cleared my mind. Like it answered so many questions of like, I'm not that bad of an athlete. Like this is why I couldn't run up and down the court that fast. Like this is why I was out of breath and this is why I was sick. So I mean, in my eyes, it was just like an answer for me. Like the answer sucked, but like at least I know why everything was going wrong the way it was, if that makes sense.
No, for sure. It's not necessarily closure, but it is in a sense that you can pinpoint what's going on, and then you stop doubting yourself as an athlete, like you said. And especially in that first semester when you're getting minutes, it's like, well, why can't I do this? And you finally get that. No, that's interesting because for a lot of people, and I feel like you are not one of these types of people, but the getting down right away on yourself. I feel like, we're not very close. I don't even think I've talked to you personally besides like on DMs to try to ask you if you'd be interested in this, but you've always kind of radiated this like positive attitude towards it. It seems like, is that the case, or is that just, everybody else seeing that from the outside?
I would say in general, I think who I am or who I show and what people perceive me as, I'd say it's pretty true with how I am. Obviously, I think sometimes people will say compliments and stuff, and I just take it off their shoulder because I mean I have my struggles. It's not like everyone knows about that. We don't get deep with that kind of stuff. I think knowing that's just human nature. Everyone's gonna have doubts. I'm gonna have bad days. Like all of that's true, and I think sometimes I will question maybe I should have been a little more vulnerable with that side just to show like there isn't this fake person that's always positive all the time or just kind of like brings light to every situation. But I do think that's just who I try to be. Situation, honestly, that's it's what got me through the team and just thinking positively about like getting emo and like doing all that stuff. I knew I had to do it, so there was no use of like in a bad situation worse. So
no, that's a tough, for a lot of people it's a tough stand to take. Right, a lot of people would sulk. And so what type of cancer was it exactly? I'm not entirely.
I had stage 2 Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Okay, so stage 2.
I guess also what I'll add about that is going into Hodgkin's lymphoma, there is 2 different types. So like there's a Hodgkin's lymphoma and there's non-Hodgkin's. And so I guess kind of going along with the question we just talked about was kind of my attitude about it. I think it really helped whenever I was down in St. Louis Children's Hospital at the start of my treatment, whenever I got a PICC line in my arm and I got the bone marrow biopsy and the neck biopsy done. Whenever they confirmed my diagnosis of it being the stage 2 Hodgkin's lymphoma, my doctors let me know in a way if you were to get any type of cancer, like the kind that I was diagnosed with was probably the best kind to have. And it had very good percentages of, being cured and like lots of stories about it. And so it all went well. And I think that was just one thing that helped. I think a lot of people, like I can't say I'd feel the same way I would have felt if it was like a stage 4
for sure
rare type of cancer. I think so. The kind it was and the rate I had, I think was part of why I might have been where I was. So.
No, I get that. Yeah. Did you have something else? Did you look like you're?
No, I just I'm not speechless about the sorts of stories and stuff like that because it's something that I've been driven into making a career out of, is being able to, study these sorts of things and understand the mechanisms as how they work and how they affect people. So for me, I'm not saying that this like hits home, but it sort of, I can look at the situation that you were given and then the situation that like I've had people in my life that have been diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. Kind of not a tangent, but my one of my best friends in middle school, he was like the running back on the football team. I was the quarterback. We were like really good friends. He was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma a year after we played together. And I remember just the trials and tribulations that he went through. And this kid was one of the most, well, he still is one of the most just cheerful and optimistic people that I've ever met. And I don't want to say that it's stereotypical of people, of individuals that are diagnosed with cancer, but the ones that I've come across, like yourself, have just been beacons of positivity and optimism. That despite the situation that you were given and despite the situations that these other individuals are in, they remain just pillars of just positive energy. It's one of the most incredible things that I probably will ever come across, is just the fight of the human spirit. And just the stories that I've heard about the women's basketball team rallying behind you, and not putting you on a pedestal per se, because I know that's not what you'd want. And I know that's not what they're trying to do, but they were trying to just show that you were not going to be defeated by this. And like you were just determined to do whatever it was necessary to get through it. And I'm not getting choked up about it, because like I'm not trying to, but I probably will, because the stuff it's pertinent to my life as well. I've had some situations of this occur in it, but it just goes to show the type of character and the type of person that you are, and these people that go through cancer diagnoses and stuff like that. So it's just, I'm blown away by your story, and we've only gotten into the first 15 minutes of it. So like, I'm honestly just going to be all ears about this one. If I have some, I might dip in, but I just want to hear it. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
One of the things that impressed me the most was hearing that you were a part of every practice and game still, even when you couldn't be around the team. For me, like, not being sick and all of that, that's a lot. And I think, again, that says the kind of who you are. But did you view like that basketball, and maybe this is a rhetorical question, but seeing the team and being a part of practice, did you see that as an escape from kind of your environment that you were in? Doctor's appointments, hospital stays, that kind of thing.
I think either I mentioned it or someone kind of asked me, and not that relate on that level, but I think everyone, kind of has that scapegoat where they have something that takes their mind off something, or listen to music. It's something they like, kind of brings them out of reality, and puts you in a safe place. And I would just being on FaceTime and watching my teammates practice, or talking to the girls outside of that, definitely my mind off of kind of what was going on in my reality. I would also just say, looking back at it, I think I just still was trying to take in everything. I would say I handled it well, but it was also just kind of like I just flew by it. And so then, obviously now, still being in remission, I think I'm still, dealing with some things about just looking back and how I felt, or did I fully feel this, and do I understand what happened, and like I was taken away from that long. And I think just part of a habit still, like I found out a week or so and I come back the day after to continue practice. But I was still on FaceTime because I wasn't admitted in the hospital yet. And I think it just started out as a nice habit that even though I couldn't be there and we were kind of unsure what the actual diagnosis was, I started FaceTiming. I just wanted to continue that, to keep like one thing in my life constant.
Yeah,
I
sure.
think honestly it did help. It was a nice getaway, but it was also tiring at times, kind of like you said, just being there going through practice is tiring.
Yeah.
And if you're hurt, I don't know if any of you guys were hurt, but for any athlete, it's like having a sprained ankle and having to watch your team, or
Yeah.
wrist or elbow, you know, any other injury, people can relate to that on all levels as being an athlete, and watching them sucks. And I just think for me, it was really draining, you know, having to be on FaceTime and the connection or
Yeah.
the phones are charged. And I mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
on their end, it was kind of a struggle. And all, I think I felt like a burden, like wanting to be there on an electronic device. But
Yeah.
it was ultimately just good for us to like talk back and forth before and after the practice. And I think since I was kind of all eyes and watching them, I could give the feedback I had, and
Hmm.
I almost would like to think that's something they look forward to because they knew that's all I could give, and they were excited to hear what I had to say, and vice versa. It was just nice to hear their compliments, you know, while I was fighting my fight. So
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that gives a great deal of credit to what it means to be a part of a team, right?
yeah,
We like to think that we talked about this a couple of weeks ago with, or actually last episode with Matt Donovan, but the importance of knowing when it's okay to ask for help, or knowing when it's okay to be a part of something greater than yourself. And I'm not saying that this situation you were going out of your way to like ask for other people's help, because I know that wasn't the case, but it shows that in a life that we deem to be so individualistic, that being able to see people come together in order to help either an individual or a group of individuals overcome something is, I think, something to speak to about this situation as well as other situations. I know this doesn't, it relates and it's not of the magnitude, but my sophomore year, I sat out. I was battling recurrent knee injuries and stuff like that, and like shoulder problems, and just the fact that I know that I couldn't be on the field with my brothers on like at that time, like in the gyms in February, the dog days of spring and like late winter, like there's something about that feeling, knowing that all 37 guys, or how many ever girls are on your team, they have your back regardless. And like it takes, as sad as it sounds, it takes something quite detrimental to your health or to your physical body to sort of realize that, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's something that I feel like it's not taken for granted, but you realize it obviously when some sort of adversity hits, because you notice that you have this really strong support system that you get to purposefully take advantage of, because that's what they're there for. That's like what the goal of a team is. That's what their role is. And so I just, again, will reiterate the fact that just the admirable strength that you possess, as well as that basketball team did, helping,
yeah,
as well as just standing as the community within the community, showing
yeah.
everybody that, you know, you guys were a team. So it was a pretty powerful
I
statement, I
agree
think.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think, you know, you mentioned community within a community. I feel like coming in as a freshman, it's not like my name was known.
Yeah.
You know, small D3 schools, that typically happen if you're a senior, you know, junior. Or, I mean, if you were a freshman getting lots of playing time, your name is definitely known. But I think it goes to show. I wouldn't say necessarily like who I am, but it's like who our team was. It's what our culture is.
Hmm.
Kind of what you were saying. It like we're all trying to be something bigger than ourselves and a part of something bigger than ourselves. And that goes to show for not only the team, but the school itself and the community surrounding. People just wanted to come together and, you know, help support me through my battle. And for me, that was great because it was me and that helped me through my battle. But I think, you know, hopefully opening up other people's eyes that, you know, we're all here for you too, or that you can be a part of something bigger than yourself. And it just goes to show who our team was. And the girls on there, you know, cared a lot about me, but they also cared a lot about supporting each other and kind of staying true to what our team, our culture holds. And I think that went as well for Ripon, just this one in general, that we can all come together when need be. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Austin, because, um, like you said, it was felt, the Midwest Conference, and it's not, regardless of school, it's something that everyone can get behind, right? Like, I just think back to watching games, and the first game you were able to attend, I think, was at IC later on, right? If I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Like, even me just watching the game, like you get chills. Like it's
Yeah.
like incredible to be able to get back to that point. And talk about another instance where you get chills, like when you were able to get back on the court
Yeah.
after, like we'll get to that. But you're right, this explosion of the sense of community, and we said that a lot in this second season of this podcast, but it's so true. And without that, it can be a pretty lonely place, and
Yeah.
especially if you're going through something like you did. But yeah, and also this was the other point I wanted to bring up. Like you said, it's a testament to the team and the culture, and especially given what the team was able to accomplish in March, or whenever they make it to the NCAA tournament. Like on top of having that, and worrying about your health, and it's just, I don't know, it's just a really really cool storyline to follow, I guess. And sports as a whole produce a lot of storylines like that. And again, I feel like I'm rambling here, but
No, you're
no, I
good.
just think it's really a testament to the team and the culture that has been built there.
Yeah. You mentioned about, how the team went on to they won our conference championship, they hosted it, won. That was really big, winning that at home.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I watched that on the TV. That was just really cool. And speaking of community again, seeing all the fan section come out and just celebrate with the girls on the floor. That's just who Ripon we celebrate. We win together. And going on to that NCAA tournament, I was actually able to go to that, so that was really really cool for me. Just being able to see the girls and be there in person with them for a game like that. Um, and yeah, we lost that first round, but I think just getting there, winning the games throughout the rest of that second semester, I think it really goes to show, only for our team, that we
Yeah.
kind of put that at our forefront. I think it goes to show, a lot of teams at all levels, whenever they're playing for something bigger than themselves, I think you tend to succeed more. You kind of put yourself on the back burner and you play for each other, and you're playing for something greater than basketball. And I think things just flow together easy. You practice harder, you kind of realize what you have, and I think other teams can get caught up in either themselves or their name, or
Yeah.
I don't know, just a lot of selfishness or jealousy. And I think, also Johnson, I think continuing on out, whenever we're in a rut, I think that's our go-to, play for her and play for the people that can't be playing right now. And I think that also relates to COVID, we haven't been
Yeah.
able to play. I hope the people that are playing now, they're excited to play, because we all weren't lived in a world where we weren't able to at one point. So
Yeah.
overall, just puts a lot of perspectives in it, and
Yeah.
goes to show it can get you somewhere great.
Yeah, and I don't want to sort of bring a pop culture version of this to the table, but it's something pretty relevant. I know we've all been athletes, or we all still are, but I don't know for sure. I'm going to get probably a little bit of feedback on this, but I think yesterday was the day that Kobe Bryant passed away. Or is that today? I don't. Today. It is today.
26th.
Okay, and so obviously one of the worst one of the worst things to happen in popular sports today, right, is first ballot Hall of Famer and all that sort of stuff. But you look and see what the city of Los Angeles did, as well as the Los Angeles Lakers. You're talking about playing for something bigger than yourself. I don't want to say that was like the sole reason why that they had such a successful season, but you sort of see that camaraderie build, that teamwork, that sense of community within a community, really take the forefront there. You see the Los Angeles Lakers make it to the NBA Finals and win. I'm not saying that the passing of Kobe Bryant and his daughter and the other individuals on the helicopter were the sole driving factor for that, because obviously there's a bunch of stuff that goes into play there. But the idea that people coming together in times of adversity, it's a pretty powerful thing. It's incredible, because I'm speaking as we as a people, like a human race, we idolize the idea of being able to do things without other people's help, right? We grow up, we want to become independent from our parents. That's like the first thing. That's the first instance that we experience of this. Ben and I, and I'm sure you're going through the same thing. Like we want that independence, right? But we start to realize in life that it's okay to be a part of something. And especially if you're a part of a sports team, a family, really, they're more than a team, they're a family. I don't care who says that. They're always going to be a family. It really puts a perspective, and it makes it a whole heck of a lot easier to do something, to get something accomplished. And you guys making it to the NCAA tournament, and I guess correlating that to the Los Angeles Lakers winning the finals, you guys did these things as a result of a cause that you were all willing to put at the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
Something bigger than basketball, something bigger than, how many points I'm going to score, or how many minutes I have, or, how many times I'm going to turn the ball over. Like, even the negative stuff, like, you put something that means more than the game, and you start to realize that the game can help you accomplish that. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
it's incredible. And, it's an amazing story to hear from you, as well as bringing light to something that everybody has probably experienced a little bit of in their lives too. So
it's good teams really interest me.
Yeah.
What makes a team good and achieve success? Because regardless of individual talent, and you said, but something like that adversity, or when it gives you something to rally on at, when you have 10 minutes left to practice and you're about to condition, or you're in the bottom of the eighth and you're down two, and you know what I mean, like, there's something to fall back on. And there's been teams that I've been a part of that, even at Ripon, that didn't have that cohesion, and even despite our talent, like, we didn't necessarily make it to the tournament, and it was a game here and there. And who's to say, being more of a team in that sense would have got us there. But again, I think it's an anomaly sometimes, where what makes teams good, like, you don't necessarily think a team should be where they are, and they are. And there's just so many factors that come into play with that, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Amazing stuff. What happens whenever you're a team like that, and culture.
Exactly. Yeah, that's something a lot of people just write off. Oh, culture. We have to do, in team meetings, we have to, hold each other accountable and figure out ways. It's just like, for a lot of people, it's very superficial and they don't understand it. And even when I was coaching, like Austin, it's hard to insert that into a program with people who don't buy in.
Yeah.
And I think buying in to whatever you're doing, your role in your first semester, first few games, like, or you, Austin, like, buying into your role, because your role changed from your freshman to sophomore year, partly injury wise, but you know what I mean? Like, the dynamics of a team are going to, demand certain roles out of people, and being able to understand that and fit in makes things go seamlessly, I think. But so I'll transition here. We mentioned.
I mean, I can too if you want. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Austin.
Okay. I'm dying to know this, because I don't want to say out of any magnitude I experienced something similar, but we were talking about the feeling of not like helplessness, but you're right, you're sidelined. You have to watch your brothers and sisters go out there every day and commit themselves to that goal that you guys set for yourselves at the beginning of this, or before the season even starts. So I don't know if I'm jumping the gun here with asking this, but I'm dying to know, because I know how it felt when I was able to take the field, but I want to know how did it feel to you when you were able to take the court? Like, when you were able to lace up your shoes, bounce the basketball on the hard floor. Like, I want to know, what was it like?
Yeah, coming back after that, I guess what I'd first touch on is, I think in order to feel the way I felt lacing up your shoes, putting on the jersey for the first time, just running out with the team up, in order to get that amazing feeling, I think I had to experience being alone while my team won at home, hosted the conference championship game, and I was as happy as I was for them. They'll be a part of the team. I was not there, and the celebration just wasn't the same. I think, whether it's like you sitting out and not being able to play, even though you were still part of the team, I think all athletes that have had an injury can attest to that. And that's really hard. But then kind of going back to whenever I was able to lace up with the jersey on, get on the court, whether getting in my first game, that great feeling came of just an overwhelming sense of happiness and thankfulness and just gratitude of being where I was then, and whether or not that was being alive or being able to play basketball and be in a healthy condition I was in finally to run without feeling out of breath. I mean, I may have a little bit because I was out of shape, but knowing like things were looking up from there, it was just an overwhelming sense of joy because I remember those feelings of not being there, and I just think I took in the surroundings. I took in the smiles and the laughs and the voices that I could hear like in person rather than through a screen, and that was really nice. So
Did it change the way you thought about basketball coming in beforehand? Like, did you have a certain ideology or mindset about the game, and then was that changed or, built upon or emphasized after? I'm just curious.
yeah, so I think coming back, obviously right at the start, you have your preseason, you come in and you're doing stuff, and I think I was, from where I was at mentally and physically, it was still just it wasn't the same. And I think I was wanting to jump in head first. And obviously, you can't do that whenever your body's been put through some stuff like I went through.
Yeah.
And I think I was happy with what I did, but it was also kind of disappointing because I had this superficial mindset of just wanting to play again, and I couldn't play the way I wanted to, and so it was a long process, but I think I remain grateful throughout the entirety of it, just because I knew I was able to do that, and probably 5 months ago I wasn't able to the way I wanted to, and so to constantly see that progress was reassuring. It was definitely hard at times,
for sure.
but still to this day it's good to see improvements. I think everyone wants, to see that statistically or physically, however I can do that, or look back at pictures. And I think just seeing of where I was at to where I'm at now definitely helps. And I think going through practice, just to say, I may not want to, run a monster like down the backs or whatever we were doing there. I think, I will just kind of snap my fingers, and in my mind I got to be like, hey, I wasn't here. Like, I can do this. I'm out of breath, but I'm out of breath because I'm out of shape, not because I have a mass in my chest anymore.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's also like a reality check. So it's a good reminder, and I think I want to keep that perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you said it best, right? You start to realize the things that you didn't necessarily take advantage of or take for granted when you were playing, but the things that you did every day unconsciously, like your stretching routine, for example, or like, for Ben and I's, it was like probably towels, like towel routine, or probably for you, like, your first warm-up shots or something like that. Those little things that you get to do in the sport that you love that you don't necessarily think have a major impact on who you are or who you are as an athlete. When those become removed from your daily routine or from your livelihood, you realize the impact and the significance. And I don't want to say that I can attest to that, but that first time being able to, go through towel routine with all the pitchers at once, like something as like minute and as just
monotonous,
as unimportant as it seems, it made an impact on my life. And I'm sure that you felt the same way with, being able to, I don't know much about basketball practices because I wasn't really a part of an organized. Yeah. I was just going to say like something like that, just something, the very fundamental thing that makes your practice a practice or makes, your pregame routine, a pregame routine. I'm sure that feeling was just more than you had a little bit more respect, I guess, for that little thing. Like just the little things made more of an important impact to you, I bet.
Yeah, kind of like how you were talking about the pregame routine, or even in practice. I think just being there with the team, and we turn on music and do our warm up, to half court and back. And I think, I'm not saying I never had fun before my freshman year, but it was like, smile, giggle, kind of talk with everyone. It meant more, and it kind of made it more enjoyable because I was there and I was genuinely laughing and just having a good time because I remembered the time I wasn't there. So kind of the little things like you said, I wouldn't like to say we took it for granted, but it was definitely something we just kind of made a habit and went with it. And then whenever you get removed, you come back and you feel it differently, you see it differently, and yeah, it's something powerful.
And it came up twice in the past couple of minutes that you talked about, and just following along on, seeing your Instagram stories. It's this idea of gratitude and how important that has become to your perspective on things. And, even for me, being able to at night or in the morning, whatever, write down 3 things that you're grateful for is such a powerful like habit to get into. And it really puts things into perspective. So how important is that for you now that you're able to practice and everything, and moving that into life beyond, right? I mean, keeping that attitude of gratitude, is that that rhymes.
Nice.
Is that like is that hard to do, or are you just in this like habit of finding things you're grateful for? And what can you say to everyone who kind of takes advantage of those little things like we were talking about, even if it's in daily life?
Yeah, I would say kind of like you mentioned, I'm doing these gratitude posts on Instagram right now, and I started that at the beginning of the year. But I've been trying to do what you said, just writing 3 things down, like journaling wise,
Mm-hmm.
before that. And so doing it on social media has just been a way of like accountability, and also just kind of realizing, my story or maybe what I'm thinking. I feel I may not have been vulnerable enough during that process, and people just saw me as this light. And so I'm keeping that light, I'm keeping that gratitude, but I'm also being real and kind of, showing people my emotions, but also saying like, even though I'm doing this now and it wasn't as bad as it was, I still feel it, and I'm still very thankful, and I have a big sense of gratitude for other things in my life. And I think not gonna lie, I think the first year just in remission, I was struggling, coming back to practice. I was very grateful. And like you said, just the warm up, just being there, I was super happy, and it was very genuine, and kind of took it for granted. And now I won't anymore kind of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But it was hard because I couldn't physically do some of those things. So it was lots of questioning and like, why is this so hard? Or I wish it was this. And I think I just kind of had to, feel that and then kind of take a snap back into reality and just say, kind of go back to it all being like, well, at least I'm just grateful to be here. And I think I just kept reminding myself that like I got to get 1% better every day. That's what my coaches were telling me. Just what's next? Like I may not do this now, but maybe I can tomorrow, and just keep working at getting better. And that was just kind of my mindset and my goals throughout it. And as to where now, getting back to the gratitude thing, what's really helped me is, like you said, making it a habit. I think I've always felt it, and I think everyone's grateful whenever you really stop and think about it. But I don't think people realize that they're not taking time to be thankful for things like that all the time because they haven't made it a habit. I know they are, but I think it's you start to feel it more the more you vocalize it or the more you write it down.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely recommend, writing it down, just saying it out loud at the beginning, really make it a habit. And I think now, I could complain about a problem. I don't like complaining. I don't like going on rants, but I do feel more of the sense that I feel like I can now because I say it, I feel it, I get it done, I get it out there. And then it's become a habit to say, but I'm happy to be here. Right now I'm quarantined at school, not because I have COVID or anything, but just precautions here. And, but I'm like, I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy we're still in school. And I think it's a big thing if no matter what's going on in life, no matter how bad things may get, you always have something that you're grateful for. And that's just a new outlook of life. I hope I never lose.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. It unlocks these feelings of happiness that you don't otherwise, tap into. And as athletes, like you said, you're always hungry for more. And, I could definitely see how that would be an issue where you're like, okay, I'm here, but like, why can't I do this? Or why can't, you know what I mean? And I think, like you said, being able to put yourself into perspective, realize where you came from and where you are now. And, like you said, get 1% better each day. And I think that's, in and of itself, life advice that people should heed, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
No, I'm happy you mentioned the quarantining thing about the pandemic and all that sort of stuff, and about being able to realize the things that you are thankful for, but not only realizing it, but making a habit of actually saying or manifesting that you're thankful for these things. Because especially with this pandemic, I know Ben and I have had a lot of time to on our own time to mentally reflect, right? To look at who we are in the mirror every day, and what can we do to not only be better for people around us, but importantly, be better for ourselves. And I think your journey and your story speaks to that, because I don't know this personally. Like I haven't gone through something like this personally in my life, like in my body, but I know that I wouldn't want people to look at me in the way that they looked at me in the past, as being like weak or something like that. Like I want to be able to be as strong as I can be. And I think that takes a certain level of that grind and the determination that you're talking about, being better, 1% better every day, right? We hear day in and day out, like, oh, you got to give 100% of what you got. Got to give 100% of what you got. And I agree with that, right? You don't always have 100%. You can give 100% of what you have every day. But kind of, I don't know why I brought that one up, but that's just another one of those statistical things that we use to sort of relate how we are, going through day-to-day life. But that 1% grind that you were talking about, that's pretty interesting, because Ben and I have talked a lot about complacency on this podcast, and we've had some guests on here that talked about complacency. And you being a student athlete, you deal with the difficulties of complacency in two realms, right? And as being an athlete as well as being a student. Unfortunately, Ben and I's time on the baseball field is over. So our student athlete complacency days, that's just student wise now. We're academically battling complacency. So I'm kind of curious as to some of the things that you do every day for your student athlete career, right? Like, what are some things that you do, because you're in a pandemic right now? It's pretty hard to be an athlete and a student in a pandemic. So what are the things that you do daily that help you grind that 1% out every day?
I would say, just kind of like you said, you don't always have 100%, but you give 100% of what you have. And so every day that number is different for me. And
Yeah.
From coming back from where I was, going through treatments, to reflecting on my full year coming back to school and having my first full season under my belt last year, to right now kind of being in a pandemic, I'd say it's just, as may not physically demanding as it sounds, it's just eating enough and eating healthy and keeping my body just fueled to the amount I need. I think daily is a big factor that I've been working towards, and just hydrating, drinking lots of water. That's kind of more of a healthy, nutritious route, going with that. And then it's just getting physically stronger, I think, a little bit each day. So whether that's, knocking out 10 and 20 push-ups a day, or doing a full body workout. It's definitely harder not with a team and not in a weight room right now because of the pandemic we're in. But just doing little things like that. And then I think on top of school-wise is reading. There's this thing called the 75 Hard Challenge, actually. I don't know if any of you've heard of that. Look it up. It's really, really interesting because it's more of a mental challenge. And I think 75 Hard, you work out twice a day, 45 minutes minimum. And that's a struggle because people see huge body transformations. And I think it's really set up to be a mental challenge. And it's because one has to be outside and then the other is just another one. And I think it's you overcoming that. You are making choices every day. And so you choose to go outside and you put your body through that, and you eat healthy and you stick to a diet. And interesting one, as it sounds, is read 10 pages a day. And that's, I wouldn't say that's to get any smarter or like just to be a good reader or what that has to it, but it's just another one of those check marks where you do it and you don't slack off on it, because you have to do that for 75 days straight. And as physically demanding as it is, it's, you know, these are things in your daily life that will help you physically, but also kind of help prepare you mentally of just doing what you set your mind to. And so I brought that up just because I've been interested in trying it now, just in this pandemic, and going along with that mentally. I just took a few things from that, and it's reading. I like self-help books. So with getting 1% better every day, whether it's in your sport or in life or in any type of friendship relationship, just making that 1% better. I'm doing that for myself. So, you know, reading mentally strong books, just different ways about going about life, or wisdom books. Just reading that makes me a little bit better. Gets me that 1% every day. And so those are just a few things. Reading, kind of doing that gratitude, making sure I eat right, and then coming back as a student, I'll just keep adding on that and we'll get better. So
Finally, someone that I think would like a book club, Austin.
Yeah, hey, yeah, go check out. Was that episode 5? Yeah, go listen to it. You might enjoy it.
When Austin was down here, I just sent him home with 3 or 4 books that are
over by the window.
Those lines. Yep. You know, as weird, or like, I don't know the right word for this, but like when you're at Barnes and Noble, let's say, and you're younger, or like in your high school, right? You're just like, oh, self-help, I don't need that, or you know what I mean? But like, just like what we try to set out to do with this podcast, and being exposed to those different ways of thinking, whether it's the 7 spiritual laws that I gave you, Austin, or Think and Grow Rich, or now I'm just naming off, you know, ones that I know, but just like books like that force you to get uncomfortable with your thinking and, you know, reevaluate, and you get more in tune with what you believe, but you also get other perspectives, like you said, to get better. I just think that's super important. And do you have like a favorite self-help book that's like your go-to?
Oh boy. That's a good one. I've read quite a few. Honestly, there's this one called, I don't know the exact title of it. It says like it's a Buddha's brain, and it says it's like the neuroscience of love, happiness, and wisdom. And I actually read that last semester in a psychology class, and it was called Mindfulness, Meditation, and Mental Health. And I think that was just a good one for us, you know, being in a pandemic in that semester, and just getting through that in general. That's good for anyone. But it really helped me kind of learn, like I said, it was about the neuroscience. So it kind of helped understand what's going on in your brain, and your mind's different than your brain, and you can train your mind to think and be positive and make all these choices that help you and that your future self will thank you for. So that was a good one, just to kind of understand the science behind it. And then I'm reading this one now called 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do. And to me, that's really interesting, is because to me, just the kind of person I want to be, I don't want to call out people and say, like, you shouldn't do this. And a lot of people are like, for our team culture talk, like, we shouldn't say, hey, don't do this, but do this instead. We want to try and say, you know, positive affirmations and say, hey, you did really well doing this, and try this move next time. And so this book kind of contradicted that, but it's really good just because it kind of puts you in your place. And I think what I've learned about is, I don't think saying what you shouldn't do is the best way. And I don't think always going along the route of saying like positive affirmations. I think in order to be the best version of yourself, and to be mentally strong, you have to see both sides. You have to be able to call yourself out, and you have to have friends that you rely on that can call you out and hold you accountable on what you're doing wrong, and also give you ways of how you can get better. So overall, that's just like stuff I picked up, and that has done that. So, but book club, you guys got any good books? Just send them my way. I'm always looking
at read a whole wall.
Yeah, we have a ton. No, we will definitely send some over. And I think like now I have to read like 2 to 3 books a week, which sucks, but it's also good. But like you're saying, just finding a new challenge or a new way of thinking, and because life is all about experience, right? Like I think framing how you do things and how you think about things in an experienced way, like I'm doing this because I've never done this before, or like I think that's really important. And it, like I said before, you know, exposing yourself to those different ways of thinking, it's incredible once you can kind of tap into that. Like for me, Seven Spiritual Laws of Success has been influential. You know, just I've drifted from it, and I need to hold myself accountable. But like meditation, as stupid as it sounds, you know, sitting for 20 minutes and just not doing anything. I introduced it. I talked with Patty. Like I introduced it like into some practices. I think Austin, and people, 2 3 guys would fall asleep. It's like, you know, it just tells you how much is going on, and being able to slow down life is, I think, is the key to being happy in some sense. So
Oh, I have two things quick before I've been thinking about them since you guys have been talking, and I think they're worth note to say. Number one, I think we should run a petition to change age into experience. We talk about this a lot on our podcast, but we I don't think we misquote age, but I think we should rather quote it as experience, right? Because we go through this thing called life, building upon certain benchmarks and certain milestones of age, and we don't really identify what that means as to who we are as people, right? Like I'm sure nobody thinks or dreams that by the age of 25 like they're going to have some sort of physically detrimental illness or ailment that goes wrong in their lives, or injury or something like that, right? But because of that thing, we gain a certain experience. And so I don't think that age does our life justice, if that makes sense, as a word or as like as a philosophy of going about life. So I think this is just me just spitballing here, but I think experience is a better term for it. And I think listening to your story, it really, you seem to, as weird as this is, but you seem to show wisdom beyond your age, or sort of like who you are beyond what your age says. And like we're not much older. Like it's something that it's very noticeable when somebody just exhibits experience regardless of how old they are. Like I have cousins that like for some reason they're only like 9-10 years old, wisdom beyond their age, right? I just think that we need to get away from that age thing instead of deeming experience. But the second thing, kind of relating back to what we're talking about with self-help books and sort of your journey, is I remember you mentioning something about how you weren't really emotionally vulnerable, right? You sort of, you accepted the compliments of others, and you accepted like the support from others, but you didn't really show that emotional side. I guess you were pretty positive, pretty optimistic, not steadfast in that belief, but you were pretty determined to be optimistic through it all, and that's amazing. I think one of the things that the self-help books that you have been identifying, as well as what Ben has been talking about and the some that I've gone through, is they open your mind up to vulnerability. I think that's another misnomer, is that's a word, by the way. I didn't know that until today. But I think vulnerability is too often confused with weakness. I think it's perfectly acceptable to be vulnerable. And the vulnerability that I'm talking about isn't, feeling anxious about confiding in your best friend with a deep, dark secret kind of vulnerability. I mean, that's just justified in that case. But like being okay to understand that where we are in life, we're uncertain of things, or we know that there's certain pains going on, there's certain disadvantages that we're being presented with, and realizing that it's okay to feel an emotion toward these that isn't sunshine and rainbows. Like I'm not saying that that's how we feel, but we have this inherent sense to be sturdy and just strong through everything, when in reality it's almost impossible to remain, stone-faced through it all, right? Like you can't just not absorb the stuff that's around you. And so I think I haven't read it yet, but the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, I think, is incredible at showing that, from what I've heard from listening to Kilmer talk about it with Patty and you, and I'm sure other guests have read it. But I just think that we have to normalize that feeling of vulnerability. It kind of goes back to, I know I'm getting on a tangent, but it gets back to that teammate sort of sense, right? Like it's okay, you feel vulnerable around your teammates, but that's okay, because when you're with your teammates, you have that sense of reliance. Like they're my teammate for a reason. Like you can fall back on them. And so I think along with the self-help books, being a part of a team sport like what Ben, myself, and you have been, is it builds upon that and it allows us to work on that. But I don't think that anybody in society today is perfectly acceptable being vulnerable. I mean, myself included, I'm nowhere near that, but I think it's something that these self-help books, I don't like calling them self-help books because it makes them sound less of a book, but you know what I mean?
Personal growth. I think that's
personal
the better...
growth. I think that's a great word for it. Thank you, Ben.
You're welcome.
I think that yeah, that's a book club, right? But I think that it's important, and your story speaks to that because you said it best. Like you had to be optimistic about it, because if you weren't, there wasn't any hope for that. Like there wasn't faith in that. Like you had to be strong, and rightfully so. It's just there's sometimes, I'm not saying that situation is that sometime, but there's certain things that it's okay to be vulnerable, and I think that you're producing the right message by saying that sort of stuff. So
relating your with what you were talking about is vulnerability related to what Ben was talking about. I think you just, along with experiences and age and uncomfortability, like you have to be uncomfortable in order to grow, and you have to keep putting yourself in those situations. And how I kind of said, I think everything I said was true, and the optimistic mind, like that's just who I was, and it's kind of what radiated through me, I think, without me even knowing until looking back after my journey was over, is that that's what people saw, and I'm grateful for that, because that's what was real. That's what kind of spoke out of me. And I just think, looking back over it, I can't change that because it happened. The past is the past, and it all worked out for the best possible way. And I think kind of what you said with myself reading more of these self-growth books is it's become more of a vulnerability thing, and I realized that now. So I can't be too hard on myself, I think, and this goes for everyone. We should never be too hard on ourselves about changing, about like, oh, I should have been more vulnerable here, because I just don't think I was exposed to that much, and I wasn't trying to be a tough, strong person. It's just it's who I was. And I think now, being put through that experience, I realize there's another important side of it, and now is just the time to share that. And I can't change that then, but now being more vulnerable about those times, and then to continue on to what I'm dealing with now, and still keeping that gratitude mind there at the end, I think just kind of wraps it up perfectly. And everyone's experiences are different, and I think that they shape us uniquely and individually of who we are, and that's why we all have different experiences and how we come to be. So
I think you just explained what our podcast is all about in those last couple of lines. So that, like, right there in itself is pretty dignifiable. So thank you for that.
That's really interesting when you say, looking back at the past, I should have done this, or I should have been more, apt for change here. But you're right. Like you're a totally different person 6 months ago than you are today. And it's your job to, like you said, keep growing. And really incredible stuff from your story. And like Austin said, like your experience has made you wiser beyond your age, like Austin said. I think that's a really powerful line. And life's all about building experiences, and whether negative or positive, it's kind of how you emerge through it. But
you'll learn and grow either way.
Exactly.
Whether it's good or bad, like you said.
No, we won't keep you too late here. I don't know when you have class or when that all starts, but that should be a fun semester. But we want to thank you for joining us. It's really powerful stuff, and I hope people that listen to the end here really take or are able to reflect and take some things from this conversation. And I'm sure we'd love to continue this down the road if that's something you're open to. And we wish you wish you the best of luck with your for your shortened season and moving forward. So
we appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. It was good to hear your guys' thoughts too, just about everything, about experiences and where we can go from that. And I think one thing I want to say is I hope any listeners that are still listening and following through with this is that it doesn't just have to take people going through a hard experience, or whether you're not an athlete or you are, everyone's story. I think the basis of what we're trying to get across here applies to everyone, and kind of goes to show with same thing with COVID. I was taken away from basketball. Well, I think everyone here on this earth living throughout this pandemic has been taken away from something one way or another, and I think it's just about how we go about it. So this is one experience that we can all relate to, and just got to go through it and hope that the best is yet to come here shortly. So
yeah
thank you again.
Absolutely.
Cool to talk to you guys. Let me know if you ever have any more questions or want to chat again.
For sure. We'll see you next week.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.